So I really like to understand and help you guys to understand and explore together how AI is entering creative world, how is changing campaigns and strategies around creative and marketing. Also, how we manage in the combination between humans and machines, which is really important, and I'd like us to explore this today. And again, what sort of skills do we need as professionals, right? There's this whole chaos and darkness about the job's gonna be finished, you're gonna be doomed, you're gonna be dying, you're gonna be starving, you're gonna be fucked. So we listen from these guys, how much is this true and what's happening? So our panel is 50 minutes. We're gonna have about 10 minutes, 15 minutes for Q&As. And you can Instagram, Facebook, tweet, LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever you want. The hashtag is Pulse2020, thank you. And please make sure you have a lot of this stuff so we can go there and give likes and we can become quite popular, hopefully trending here today. So AI is too much of a big thing, right? So we drop the concept of AI very loosely, and it's quite hard to understand what it is. So for the context of today, I thought I would run a short video with a really cool guy, expert, talking about AI, and that's me. So let's listen to
So when it comes to artificial intelligence, I like to categorize in three big pillars. I like to categorize artificial intelligence on advertising, ad tech, martech. The second one is I like to categorize in experiential and functional artificial intelligence. And the third one is I like to categorize around data and insights. And each one has its own function. User experience sits around experiential and functional artificial intelligence. What are tech and martech are Google, Facebook advertising, and data sites about finding new solutions, new services, or finding hidden patterns behind there.
Thanks, Lucio. So today, I'm your host. I'm Lucio Ribeiro. I'm lecturer of digital marketing at RMIT. I'm also lecturer of artificial intelligence at RMIT. I lecture at Duke University on marketing sites, and I'm a marketing consultant. That's how I spend my time. But this is not about me. I would like to, today I have with me three amazing professionals, three very talented and very importantly, experienced professionals. So I need to read to make sure I don't mistakenly call you things you're not. So I have here next to me Nicole Flinton-Ferraro. She is Director of Experience Design at CHE, which is, in my opinion, currently the best agency in Australia, New Zealand, next to Clemenger. I don't want to have any fights here. But I absolutely adore the model of CHE. I think they've done amazing work. And Nicole will explain a little bit better. Next to Nicole, I have my good friend, Ben Kidney. Ben is all-around an amazing good guy. He's also the COO of Clemenger, which we had a little bit of discussion here. I put Clemenger as the most creative agency in the world. Okay, let's move on. I think so. And I have the amazing Kruti Patel. She is the CTO of Shebah Rideshare, which is hopefully you're familiar with. If you're not, she'll explain a little bit better. So welcome, panel. Welcome. Thank you. So Nicole, start with you. How about you give a little bit of background of how you got here, what you do, who you are?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, first of all, for having me. It's an absolute privilege to sit on the panel with these guys. My background is very different to what you often hear from those who work in advertising. I haven't done advertising my entire career. I've definitely had probably a 50-50 blend of client-side and advertising. And I think that has put me in a really unique position to talk about topics like this and to be able to add value for the clients that I work with. And that is really understanding, especially with really big corporates, how things like AI, how personalization, how delivering true connected customer experiences can add tangible value to a business, but also develop those deep, rich relationships with their customers and build that depth and breadth and customer advocacy that ultimately, ends up with the brand love that you need for a brand to be successful. So, yeah, really excited to be here talking about that today and to give you my perspective.
Thank you. Ben.
Hi. Ben Kidney. I have followed what is probably a fairly traditional advertising path. Commenced my career as a digital media trafficker at a very small agency. I was the first employee at this digital agency, and I do often reflect on how different the landscape was then. It was 9MSN, eBay, car sales, realestate.com, and Google. And multivariate testing on Google was like, green car, red car. Try some combinations with the spelling wrong, and try and sort of trick the AdWords algorithm to get cheaper bids and things like that. It's vastly more sophisticated landscape now. But 15 years ago to I guess 3 years ago to today looks incredibly different to what it did before as well. Always been the sort of digital guy, have worked in digital agencies and integrated agencies. I think in the last 4 years at Clemenger, commencing as the head of digital and essentially building capabilities, and now operating as the COO, I think is a really strong indication that of the direction that the advertising industry is going. In that it's the first time in my career I haven't been a specialist. In fact, I'm sort of looking to put digital and technology principles across the entire business. And our CEO, Gail Ariel, started around the same time as myself, and she was the head of CX. So I think we're kind of an indication of where the industry is going.
Hi everyone, I'm Kruti. I work for a very amazing company called Shebah Rideshare. If you don't know, Shebah is a rideshare company for women and children. So only women and children can ride with Shebah, and it's mainly designed or made for their safety. So yeah, that's my background, where I am from right now. Other than that, I have very different experiences in all the companies I've worked with. Mainly in my previous company where I worked with, it was marketing agency as well. And I worked on a lot of AI-based projects, mainly building chatbots and stuff. So yeah, it will be fun to talk about that today.
All right, we're gonna need to settle some stuff here, CHE versus Clemenger, and how many of you guys have...
We're one big family.
No, that's not good. How many of you guys have Shebah on your mobile? Cool. Okay, by the end of today, can we all do like a mass download on this? So we have we can have the KPIs met today. So the title of this talk is AI in the creative role and marketing and advertising. That's why we are here today. So I'd like to kick off with you, Ben. I would like to understand that can AI really help in the creative process? Is it a thing? Is that doable? Where the fuck is AI there helping, and how is helping? Can you just spill it off for us, and how is that helping, if it's helping? Fuck, that's a big question.
Yes, I think it can help, and I'll preface this by saying this will be the first and last time I talk about it, because it's such a well-trodden territory, and I don't want sort of half the room to leave if you think this is going to be a terrible talk. I think there is certainly economies of scale and efficiencies in it, and that's being used like right now for, I'm talking dynamic banners, across CRM and things like that. And simply put, it just it does the simple thing simply, and requires us to have less developers and less designers and things like that in our building. But I think that is really under-delivering what the promise of AI can be. And I think, so there's two ends of the spectrum. There's that, which is really, really underwhelming, and I don't think it's delivering a good user experience. It's delivering some efficiencies, but not a good user experience, in my opinion, or creativity. The other end of the spectrum is when people talk about AI, and to your sort of opening piece, Luch, was like, it's going to take all of our jobs, and it's going to be, it's going to change the world, and it's going to change the world tomorrow. I think that's misrepresenting what the landscape is like as well. So somewhere in the middle. We talk about, at Clemenger, we talk about inserting creativity to where it's never been before. And we talk about broadening the aperture of creativity beyond just communications to services and products. And I think that AI can, enable, the creative industry to deliver services. It can enable us to deliver products. Despite the sibling rivalry between CHE and Clemenger, I think CHE are the best agency at the moment in Australia, certainly, that are delivering customer experience using the principles of marketing technology at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a whole lot of stuff that we're talking about building up value. So actually, Nicole, how about, rather than me answering this, how about you jump in and say, how is not just CHE, but your mindset of AI delivering value, not just for enterprises or businesses, but also for customers? Do we even care? Like, people, do we even care about AI? So where is the value between businesses and customers, and where AI enables these two things?
Yeah, look, it's probably one of the biggest conversations we're having with all of our clients at the moment is around what is that intersection between technology for technology's sake versus things that are going to genuinely add value for the business and the customer. And, to Ben's point, not to labour it, there is so much sophisticated AI that happens at the moment that we are, in some instances we're aware of, in others we aren't, and it just makes life easier. It can be things as simple as a chatbot, if executed well, can give you the information you need when a call centre's closed or you don't want to wait on hold. Things like that adds value. It removes friction from our daily lives. There are things around self-service that really help make things more accessible to us. When you think about personalisation, it's a cliche example, but you think about Amazon or and the likes, and it's using what it learns about you to give you what you want faster, so you don't have to spend time and effort looking for the content you're looking for. Now, in saying that, if it's executed poorly, it has the complete opposite effect. Like, it absolutely, when that pair of shoes follows you around the internet for 3 weeks, it is the absolute pits. But if it's done really well, it makes life a little bit easier. So I think when you talk about the value to a customer or to us in our daily lives, it's not that it's happening. It's just they're making things easier, and I think that is where a lot of value can live. But when you think about it from a creative perspective, there's a really brilliant case study I encourage you to have a look at around Westworld. And I won't go into detail because it's a long story, but basically they were seeing that they weren't getting enough engagement from the previews that they were putting out to market. It wasn't meeting the targets they were expecting. And they used a really sophisticated AI tool to help them create multiple edits and test them in market. And what they saw was, for men and women, 2 drastically different versions of this promo ad had exponential results in the amount of people then wanting to download and watch this show. Again, great value for that business in that context because they were driving the engagement that they wanted. And from a customer perspective, I was getting served something that interested me, and I then got to watch a show that I wouldn't have watched otherwise. If they had have gone with the generic one-size-fits-all, I probably would never have watched Westworld because it didn't appeal to me, it wasn't contextualised for me and what I was interested in, so I was missing out. So again, there are lots of really effortless examples where you don't know that AI is happening to you, and I think that's where it can really add a lot of value to both the business and the customer.
It's very interesting because you're talking about what we have now, and you did mire something along personalization, did you guys? And you did something else, but I think that my mindset is, you talk about creativity and where the technology is enabled. Now we have all these media, all these channels, whether it's YouTube or Facebook, and then message can reach the customers in the speed of light, right? But if it is a bad message, like shit message, at speed of light is still shit. Right? It's still bad. So the creativity and the mindset, the strategy, the problem, I like this mindset of customers don't buy things. They are in a mission of accomplishing something, whether it's wearing something, whether it's a date or buy a car. So where is the point, for example, Kruti, what is the point that technology should meet humans' creativity? Where is the point? Where we bring Do I bring technology at the beginning or the middle? How that works?
Yes, so most of the times, which I have, I've seen what works is firstly coming up with an idea or creative idea and see how it's gonna impact users or customers, and then based on that, finding the flow which you want to present or the emotions that you want to touch of the customers, and then maybe based on that find out what technologies or what tools you can use to achieve that. That's the best way I have seen working, because other way you can't work. You find out, oh, I found this really cool chatbot, I want to use that, and how can I use it for XYZ client? That's not how it should work, because then you are not touching the emotions of the users. Technology is sort of an enabler, but creativity and your ideas and how you execute it is the main goal, should be the main goal, yeah.
I was just going to say, no, I think that's a really brilliant point around it being an enabler, because at the end of the day, the human creativity and the empathy that exists within us as humans is what makes the work that we do in agencies unique. Now, that's not to say that AI won't be able to allow us to have a velocity and pace that we as humans can't necessarily execute on our own, but I think that that is really where the intersection of human creativity and AI capability come together to deliver something great, because you may have multiple ideas, you may have multiple territories, you can use AI capability to figure out what is going to land best for whom a lot faster with AI than you ever could just with, running, human-led research and things like that. And that's not to say that that doesn't still have a place, but I think understanding it as an enabler is key. It gives you data faster, it gives you insights faster, it can test things faster than you can, and it can take away some of those menial tasks that actually take people away from true creativity. Do you know what I mean?
I have a really good example. In New York, they had a campaign for domestic violence, and there were not many people looking at that campaign on Times Square, one of the banners. But what they did is, as I said, technology is an enabler sometimes. They came up with an AI system where and the number of times a user or a passenger, a traveler looks at the banner and their eyes meet the banner, at that time the domestic violence injuries on a woman or man or child or whoever increases. And that caught a lot of attention. And that was one of the most successful campaigns about domestic violence has been so far. So I think it's, this is technology initially gives you an insight that you can learn from, and then you can come up with a creative idea that what you can solve it, basically.
Ben, do you want to say anything about it?
I think Kruti's point's a really good one, in that it should start with we should always start with a use case. So what's the use case? What's the customer friction? What's the business case that we're trying to solve for? And then use AI technology, creativity, strategy to then help solve it. I think it requires a shift from most organisations, I think, to not think about what products or services do we want to sell, and think about the user. So one of the practical ways that we do it is we start to think about life stage. So a user on a digital platform or channel will indicate to us through their activity, certain things that will indicate, what they might do next. Now, if you're a product or a business focused enterprise, you will just serve them, they didn't like that product, let's serve them the next product, or they did click on that one, so that's the pair of shoes that will follow you around for 3 weeks. But think about, well, what else are they doing, and then what propensity might they have to be moving house, or to wanting to go on holiday, or whatever it is, and then provide them with value. And that value could come in the shape of content. It could come in the shape of peer support, or something that's going to grab their attention for a more for a really important message. So I think it's technology is like the delivery mechanism in a lot of ways, but it's the user, it's the business strategy, and it's the creativity that actually makes it matter.
I think the AI, what it really gives us is the contextual relevance that we as humans wouldn't be able to get otherwise. You know, you visiting our website wouldn't tell me all of the other things that you're interested in. I wouldn't be able to look at all of the other third-party data that exists that tells me you actually are really interested in a specific topic, and therefore, you know, I can then start to assume things and use that digital footprint to imply what might be really relevant to you. And I think that's where the beauty comes from, because it's unlocking things that we can't necessarily do ourselves. So, you know, to your original provocation, I don't think it's a AI or human. I think it's AI and human. And I think where AI is doing brilliant things, it's when the human isn't there or doesn't have the ability or velocity to do it. So it basically amplifies everything that the human creativity wants to do.
So it's very interesting. Let's talk about the combination, the combo, machines plus people. And now let's not go to the whole Terminator thing that's going to die and the robots is going to die and kill everybody. Let's not go there. Let's talk about some most basics. So I worked in a case where a client came to me and said, we have these surveys. We've done surveys for the last 3 or 4 years. It's an automotive client, which I worked for many years. It's not hard to connect the dots, but there's a lot of surveys, and they didn't have human capacity or perhaps time on their hands to go through the open field questions and actually understand what the clients or the customers were saying, right? So we passed this through AI, which is in this case is a fucking Excel, right? It's a big Excel that does connect the dots really fast. And we call this AI. And finds correlations, not causations, correlations. People saying this in Queensland, they're also in Victoria and so forth. So machine read that very quickly and gave us the big topics. One of the things that came to us was, okay, people are complaining about the quality of the coffee at the dealers, all right? It's one of the most mentioned things. And what was beautiful on the utilization of machines and humans was machine and the tools identified the perhaps need or perhaps opportunity, but yet it didn't tell us what to do. So then we get that thing and say, okay, let's sit down. The team here would sit down, the technical lead, the business, the human UX, and sit down, okay, great, we have this opportunity. How do we go from here? And that leads into my question. If there's a perfect road in either client or agency, what should be a process if I wanted to take advantage of technology or creativity? When things start, how it goes, who do I talk first? You know, let's say I'm a client and I want to do something, because I get these calls now. I want to do something in AI. Okay, let's fucking do it. Let's do it, that's fun. But what is the perfect world? So, Nicole, start with you. I started with people at the center of things. We can't go wrong when you start with people. What is the perfect briefing, the perfect way to start?
I mean, look, perfect brief, that'd be nice. I think, look, the place to start really is understanding what you're trying to achieve. So having a genuine, rich insight that tells you about a customer need or a customer problem that needs solving, whether it be a brief that ends up in AI or ends up in a creative solution is kind of beside the point. If you know what need you're trying to solve for, you're in pretty good shape. When it comes to the role that AI starts to play, where I get nervous is when the brief is AI. Because we've already decided the solution and you end up retrofitting accordingly, and the CX undoubtedly ends up being shit because you haven't been solving for a customer, you've been wanting to build up something in your resume that has AI in it. If you think about the need you're trying to solve, and then you start to think about, you know, the things that make personalization beautiful when it's done well are contextual relevance. It's understanding the need. It's understanding the channels in which that need would be best solved. It's about thinking about how the different channels can come to life. We know that no one follows a linear journey. We can draw as many infinity loops as we like. No one's ever going to follow them. We have to understand those different intersections between those moments of disproportional value for the customer, and then start to think about, okay, how do we get really smart about it? And if you start to follow those steps, you will naturally end up in an AI space, purely because personalization requires technology. It requires the smarts that we as humans just can't possibly do at the pace that technology can. But if you have that really clear process, you will end up in a place where what you are creating is a connected conversation that exists over time. Like if I was to have a conversation with you now and then see you tomorrow, if I then asked you again what you did today, you would think that I was pretty shit. You probably wouldn't want to be friends with me. People feel the same way about brands. If I've already come in and I've given you all of this data about me and what I'm interested in, and you serve me up content or offers or whatever it is that is not remotely relevant, I'm not going to have an affinity to that brand. I'm not going to feel like you know me. Because let's be real, people know that their data are being used today. When you go on a website and you search things and you put data in, you don't think to yourself, oh, this isn't going to get used in some way at some point by this brand. Everyone understands that. So there is an expectation of value exchange, and you've got to find ways to deliver on that. So if you know the need you're trying to solve, if you get really clear about how you're going to create that connected experience over time, and you're using data in the right way, and you're creating a value exchange, 9 times out of 10, you'll end up in a pretty decent place.
So, okay, we talk about persistent, I'm not even sure the name of the terminology here, but let me just ask something. Do you have any studies or anything? Can you talk about the impact or behavioral impact or perception impact to your brand or a product on the persistent advertising that keeps following you? Like the example of the shoes. Do you have anything to talk about this, how bad it is for the brand? There's anything like a study or some sort of research that you might have done of the impact of persistent shoe ads on customers? How many of you guys have done that and like you just jump and say, oh, I just want to see the price of something, and then you just, oh fuck, dude, that just keeps following you.
What's worse when you actually buy it? You've bought the thing and they keep trying to sell it to you the next day.
Well, you see, and that's again, it's actually 2 questions. I'll hold the other question because it's about technology, just smart planning that you can build audiences that exclude you. Okay, this bot automatically he exclude and include an inclusion. But what is the impact? What is the mental impact that I have in terms of affecting a brand when I'm doing this kind of persistent, annoying advertising?
So I won't give the stats because I know I'll get them wrong, but there are several studies that we've referenced even up until a pack I was writing yesterday from Gartner, from Forrester. There's several studies. I encourage you to look into them. But the numbers that are shown there on brands that are delivering connected customer experiences, and by that I mean really tangibly connecting their data through the likes of DMP and DSP to make sure that they're actually pulling their first and third party data appropriately and they're not retargeting you with something you've just bought, making sure that their CRM programs are interconnected so that you can reference a product you might have just bought. Mecca do it beautifully. You'll buy a product and a few days later they'll ask you for a review, and then if you review that you then get something else, and so on. And so it's this kind of really connected relationship that you're engaging with, and the stats that you'll see in these Forrester and Gartner reports show you how exponentially better these brands perform to those who don't, because it's just the expectation, the standard from consumers today is that it is the Spotifys of the world, it is the Meccas of the world, it is the Apples of the world. They're cliche examples, but the reality is, irrespective of category, they are setting the standard. Consumers know what good personalization looks like now, and they're just not really willing to accept anything less.
So, okay, to make this work and build the journey, or at least the touch points and the creative and all the stuff, how about the data? How do you start even freaking collect that thing? Like where do you place these? You place in Adobe, you place in Salesforce, how do you exclude, include, how the data quality, just talk about a little bit of the quality of the crystal clear data.
Yeah, it's a really good question because every requirement has a different set of tools that you can use for data. So say, for example, for Shebah, which is a product company, we use Mixpanel, which is a data platform. What it does is, what ideally we do to collect data is firstly understanding what we want to get out of it, what we want to learn from this. First of all, if, say, for example, if you are developing a feature and you want to release that to users, you want to learn about it, that whether that was successful or not. You rolled out, say, discount code, you want to learn that was successful or not. How will you know it? Basic thing, first thing is how many users used it, right? So what you will do is track that information. So I think understanding what you want to get out of it is the first key, that's the start. In terms of picking the right tools, Mixpanel or Google Analytics are the ones which you use for products, as well as sometimes it's used for more marketing sites as well. I've come across a lot of tools through Shebah, which we use, like apps flyer and stuff like that, for understanding how much user is installing, how many users are installing our apps through marketing campaigns and stuff. So every tool, every requirement has a different tool, and it's just about understanding what fits in yours. So that's where I think so a little bit technology comes in picture, or people who work in technology. So when you have a meeting with like about a campaign or a requirement or whatever that is, techie people can jump into giving you feedback about what tools are the right tools for this. Sometimes marketing people know it as well. So yeah, I've learned a lot through the marketing team at Shebah as well. So yeah, it depends. Yeah.
So Ben, I want to ask you something on the business perspective. I wrote something here. So we're seeing from these examples that definitely AI has this potential to offer marketers, CMOs, agencies, business, the ability really to identify and understand customers or prospects' wants. We can create personalized targets, but also freaking annoying, right? What we need to do to realize all this potential, primarily on the advertising perspective, getting good creative at the right time, building up the journey, moving creative, what we need to do to realize this potential? Big question, eh?
I think completely agree with Nicole in terms of having a laser focus on the user and what you're trying to solve for the user. Similarly, for the business, I think you have to have a laser focus on what results that you'd like to achieve. Even if some of those are unknown, agree the scale of what you're trying to do. And for all of our clients now, as we enter into a MarTech project or something that might lead to AI, and again, I completely agree. Let's not start with AI. Let's start with a insight. And then start execute via a POC. So do a proof of concept. If you're still working on this thing in 6 months' time, you're doing it wrong. So many implementations are taking multiple years, and by the time that they're complete, the people who decided to use that technology platform have left. The vendor that has put it in place has been just crunched by procurement. So you're essentially left with a really expensive CMS that no one who implemented it is left around to know how to use it. So start small and then iterate upon that. Have a laser focus on the user. Have a laser focus on what you're trying to achieve. Agree what that proof of concept looks like and what success looks like, and then execute it. So if it's multiple journeys all intersecting and connecting, orchestrated across channels, fine. But just start with one of those journeys. Start with one of those segments and one of those journeys. Test the hell out of it. Really analyze it. And take learnings from it, and then go again. Hopefully, building upon the same technology and insight that you originally did, but it's built more momentum because you've got more insight from the analysis of it.
Anything, Nicole?
Yeah, I was just going to build on that. I think it's one of the things we see all the time, right? It's biting off more you can chew, and then all of a sudden personalization or AI or CX, whatever it ends up being, a dirty word, because the thing costs so much money and took such a long time that the capabilities themselves get written off, but actually the process of how it was utilized was actually the problem. And I think, when you do come up with those POCs and you come up with those use cases, the other thing is getting so crystal clear on what your hypothesis is and what your threshold for success actually is. Because otherwise what we see so often is 10, 15 little POCs running around, and these POCs end up being in market for 2 years, and then you move on to the next POC, and then you look back and all of a sudden there are just all of these half-done POCs that no one's actually optimized because no one was really clear on what we were testing in the first place. No one knew actually how to validate whether it had worked or not, and we'd all actually just moved on to the next POC. So you just end up with all these little bits all over the place and nothing ends up being really connected. So having that real focus and accountability and, balls to say, what, that didn't work, we're going to turn it off, but here are the learnings, we're going to put that into the next thing. Having that courage is fundamental, otherwise you'll just end up in test land forever.
Good. We do have another 25 minutes. We have a lot of questions. There's a bunch of stuff I want to cover here. I want Kruti to talk about her project with women in tech. I want to get a little bit of skills, what we need to learn. And I wanted to put Ben on fire here. We didn't prepare this question, so I'm going to get him out of surprise. One of the campaigns that I absolutely adore as a purely advertiser, marketer person, it's one of the things you guys did it with Mars. Sneakers? Oof. Okay, sneakers. So I love the campaign. I actually think that's pretty creative. You guys got maybe cans or something like that, some awards. Okay, how about you talk what the campaign is? We should have the video, didn't. But how about you tell what the campaign is, Ben, and the process of how you came up with that. Is it okay?
Yes.
Cool. Awesome.
Snickers Hunger Rhythm. So Mars as an organisation very much follow a kind of reach and frequency model. So they really follow the Ehrenberg-Bass school of marketing, which is all about mental availability and distribution. So if you are in front of enough people advertising to them saying Snickers, Mars, Snickers, and then when they walk into a shop, Snickers is on the shelf, you'll buy more Snickers. That's their model. They don't believe in loyalty because they believe that 90% of their purchases, actually they know that 90% of their purchases happen from people that will buy 1 or 2 Snickers a year. The 10% that buy it every week, they don't need to get them to buy it anymore. But if they can get all of us, who probably only buy it once or twice a year, to buy just one more, then they'll do really well. What that's all sort of translated to is that they've been slow to adopt digital, because digital kind of is about loyalty and it is about personalization. It can be totally mass as well, but the tools that digital afford us means that we can be targeted and we can be personalized. So they came to us with multiple kind of problems that they'd like solved. It was actually quite a challenging brief. First and foremost, it was the first time that You're Not You When You're Hungry was executed online in an online campaign. We wanted to be able to attribute, which is actually attribution, I think, is one of the things AI can really help with. I think attribution across digital media is really quite difficult, and I think AI can play a huge role in that. But they wanted to be able to attribute the performance of this campaign to actual sales. And they also had a relationship with 7-Eleven that they would like to improve and build upon. And so we took all of those kind of problems, and we thought about the user. And we found a truth or an insight that in between mealtimes, people on the internet really do get a bit more narky. They really do get a little bit more angry in between mealtimes. And so we looked at Twitter. We created an algorithm, the Hunger Rhythm, that essentially scraped Twitter dozens and dozens of times a day. And we correlated the mood of the internet with the price of Snickers. And so the angrier the internet got, the lower the price of Snickers got. We didn't want to create any friction between users and their ability to engage with this program of activity. So we created a progressive web app, so no app download or anything like that. There was so it was essentially a mobile site. Users could go to that mobile site, see the price of Snickers, which is a little bit like the stock market, and choose to redeem a Snickers when it hit 50 cents. And they were then presented with a barcode and directions to their nearest 7-Eleven, and then they could go interact with the POS system there and redeem that Snickers for the next 60 minutes at the price that they'd decided to redeem it for. So that's Hungarythm, hugely successful. I think this is the bit, don't quote me. I think sales increased over the period of the campaign, which is 6 weeks, by 67% in 7-Elevens of Snickers bars. So hugely successful. We're able to attribute that. But I think what's really pleasing for us as a business is that Mars are rolling that out globally. And because of the principles of digital and artificial intelligence, we've been able to essentially create Hungarythms for international markets, almost like at the flick of a switch. Language and things like that aside, and finding local retail partners if it's not 7-Eleven. But what that's meant for us is, I think, one of the things that the advertising industry and marketers for that matter, we really need to start repeating a lot more of what we do. There's pressure on budgets. The days of just doing 3 massive campaigns that you set and forget and then go to the next one, I think are becoming fewer and further between. So from a business perspective and our relationship with Mars, it's been incredibly positive as well.
So Nicole, what's your best case in terms of advertising and marketing you've seen on the perspective of CX?
Oh, look, big question. CX or CX with AI?
CX with AI.
I think one of the best cases, if we think globally, would have to be what Sephora have done with their, I can't think of what it's called, but basically you can take a photo of yourself, pick an eyeshadow colour as an example, and use this AI tool to see what it looks like on yourself. It was a really beautiful campaign. The AI was actually done really, really well. The UX was great. The usability was great. And I think that really changed the way that people engaged with that brand. It meant that they could do more online shopping, because normally you would have to go and try and see if those things suit you, which is really great. If I think about some of the stuff we've been doing at CHE Proximity, a lot of the work that was done on velocity, the Billion Points campaign was probably one of the biggest things that we've been able to do. Leveraging technology, and it's to Ben's point, it's really about how do you make budgets go further as well for clients. Being able to film massive campaigns isn't always achievable, especially on short notice. If you've got something that's coming up in market, something that's happening in the industry, or whatever that might be, that campaign really allowed us to use smarts from an algorithm and data perspective, but also from the way we interacted with the media buyers to actually have a story follow you through the internet and tell you that whole piece. So it was basically like watching a short film in your own time based on how you were actually engaging with it. And there was, exponential numbers that came out of that. I'm not going to quote them because I know I'll get them wrong. But the Billion Points campaign was a really beautiful case for a fundamentally creative idea, a traditional creative idea around Billion Points, but used technology and media to actually bring it to life in a really tangible way, and meant that we didn't have to have the big TV budgets that you'd need to normally reach the mass that campaign reached.
I think that's very interesting. Yesterday I ran an event and we talked about the future trends. And one of the things I identified and spoke to the audience was the fast rising now, because technology allows of shop the look or try the look, all right? So let's say I see you wearing a really nice clothes and I just take a photo, upload to David Jones Meyer, and that presents itself, so visual search that match things and just introduce. I walk into a nice hotel and I see a really nice living room and I do that, and then freedom, whatever gives me. So, Kruti, that's a technical question because it is a thing. It's happening when you see Instagram or Facebook, primarily Instagram, enabling shop the image and that commerce really attached to that. You know that things coming. So how hard, or what do I need to even think, for example, as a Meyer client or a client with a big skills and a big number of products, how do I even enable that thing to happen on the background? Do I need to tag all these photos, all these products? Do I need to talk language? How do I make that technology works for functional visual search, for example?
It's an interesting question because the main thing, as we talked about before as well, is data. So understanding what are the products that are available in the Myers store, say for example. And then AI system, what it does is, so the way it thinking how I should put it, but like the way it works is, say for example, I'm wearing this pink and black outfit. What if I click my photo and upload it for someone else to purchase the same outfit? What the backend system does is identifies the colors of the clothes and then understands what exactly is what are the products that Meyer has in there which are with these colors, and then identifying, okay, something is on top, which is with that color, then identifying, okay, it is aligned with the black. So AI system identifies all this. We program it basically in a way that it identifies, drills down to the point that, okay, it is a blazer, some top, and a black pants, something like that. So that's how the tech works in background. It is heavily data-driven in this particular case. And what we have is just one image to identify, so some image processing comes in picture as well. So yeah.
So I need to have these really clean structure tagged and matching beyond just colors and sizes and visual recognition, all this sort of stuff. Which is nowadays, to be quite honest, like if you go to a stack of IBM and Watson or AWS, that's all there. You just connect. And that's where you need the CX, the consumer champion, the creativity and the technology be enabled there. So, Kruti, still keep on. Do you need some water? Are you okay?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. Just keep on you. So let's move on because we are quite close to the end, and I would like to open the floor for questions. I'd like to have questions in there. Number one question I get from my students and from people normally: if you're not developer, if you're not technical skills, what are required skills that you need to have as a business person, as a marketer, advertiser, they're non-tech, to at least talk the language? What kind of fluency you need to have to be part of this AI conversation? You can sit down as a client, you can sit down with Ben, and you can sit down with Nicole and you and have a decent conversation. So what kind of skills a non-developer should have right now?
So I don't think to understand AI, you need to have a development skills, to be honest. It works on, in the back end, it basically, you can Google and you can find n number of videos about it, but there are so many tools that you can utilize which you don't even require a development skill. You're not gonna go in and code. Most of the basic campaigns can be achieved via the data that you have or connecting the dots that you have. One of them is, he mentioned already, Watson, IBM's Watson is one thing which is helping with NLP, which is natural language processing. Same way, there are other tools like API.ai and Dialogflow, which you can use to build a chatbot without any technical knowledge. Yes, it also has now if we are talking about 3 years ago story, the things might be a little bit different because at that time we didn't have that advanced level of AI, but now we have, and we don't really require programming skill. Now, if it comes down to, say, for example, connecting your products and suggesting products based on what you have in, or in a chatbot, say, for example, that requires a webhook. And that requires connectivity to your backend system to get all this information and provide that. And that's where you will require a little bit of programming skills. Mm. But other than that, normal chatbot, creating a button clicking options and stuff like that, super easy to build now. Check out Dialogflow. It's super cool.
So very quickly between, Ben, start with you and then going to Nicole. If you are a marketer or an advertiser or even maybe an entrepreneur, in your company's ground zero AI, haven't done a thing. So how would you both recommend that we start? Can we do this in 2 minutes between you both? So where do we start in the ground zero?
I think being just as an individual, I think one of the skills we certainly look for in employees and people we see do really well are just curious. Like I think being curious and being collaborative is so important in terms of a behaviour and a mindset. The second thing I would say, in more of a functional or practical level, we've enabled through the cloud. I think, and specifically AWS. The enablement journey that we've been on through AWS has afforded us with genuinely a small digital or developer team comparative to some pure play technology companies, delivered things that are like Hungarythm without any external support. The online videos, to Kruti's point, are amazing. Certification costs hundreds of dollars, not sort of thousands, which you do see on from some of the SaaS platforms. So I think look to the cloud. Be specific about the use case and what you're trying to achieve, and then go at it. The cloud's wonderful in terms of the services that you need to make something like Hungarythm as an example. You use half a dozen services, and they all plug in together. And ultimately, the development time that you use is mostly going into the user experience and the front end.
So Nicole, very quickly, what do you suggest companies started or market executives start?
Look, if we think about marketers quite specifically, I think one of the things that is becoming more and more important, I think it died off for a little while, and I think it's coming back very much, especially as we think about the role of personalization in AI, is behavioral psychology. So one of the fundamental capabilities that I look for in the strategists in my team is some sort of background and understanding around behavioral economics. How we use those levers plays a fundamental role in the brief that we give to the tech team who will be building the algorithm, what they're looking for, why we're looking for it. A real open mind. Traditional strategy is still exceptionally important in what we do. We need to understand the fundamentals of marketing about how we're going to get a particular need for a customer, how we're going to build a strategy, whether it be a marketing campaign, a loyalty program, a CRM platform, whatever that might be. Having those fundamentals around strategy, having the nuance of behavioral psychology, and a real understanding in tech. It's no longer acceptable to be a strategist that doesn't understand data and technology. If you can't sit in a threesome, which is what we often do, you'll have someone from the tech team, someone from the data team, and someone from CX. They need to sit together and work together and really understand each other's role and how they intersect with each other. If you can focus on those areas, you'll end up in a pretty good place.